Nautilus is a possibility. Not the strongest after the Courage of the Colossus changes. You could also go for... oh, I mean, you could also go for this. Now, this is something that's been appearing over in the LCK a lot. The fact that it's being blind pick is a bit of a surprise. We can talk a little bit more about it once we get into game, but this is not a new pick. This is something we've been seeing a lot, not only in North America, but also in the LCK, mainly as actually an answer to Maokai.
But it has been a newer thing for Europe this time around, so it's taken by Expect. Unicorns were looking for that counter pick. Last one for G2 Esports, though. What are they going to lock in here? The Orianna, as you said, seem to be a pretty likely candidate, and it is chosen. So Unicorns, the last ones to them, and it's going to be Chachi's champion.
Now, I wonder what Chachi's going to run into this, because in the past, Renekton has always been considered a very aggressive, pushing top laner that's really good at just forcing you back. Typically, good wave clear and just good sustain is something that you want to try and run into Renekton, someone that can't necessarily get bullied as much. I think Poppy is a safe pick because you have the shield on the passive, someone who has reasonable wave clear with the Q. Later on into the game, she will outscale in terms of value, and I think this is very much a Unicorns of Love composition.
We're onto the Rift!
Always a dedicated fan, always here to support his team, and what a time to be here, because going up against G2 will definitely be a big test for the Unicorns of Love. We already know that they are a top team in Europe, but can they now secure that first place spot?
It's been a long time since G2's had anyone come along to upset the apple cart in Europe. Unicorns might just be the team to do it. Expectations high on them throughout the start of it. Let's take a look. As we get ready to start things off, no cheeky moves around. Everyone's starting this one standard.
And I'm looking forward to seeing how these comps play out. We talked a little bit about it during the draft, but you have to look at the composition from G2, right? They have a scaling jungler that's going to prioritize on early farming rather than looking for those ganking, looking for those opportunities. In the bottom lane, Jhin and Tahm Kench, they're going to struggle against the Varus and Malzahar, who are going to be constantly pushing them underneath that turret. But this is a classic G2 thing to do. They don't mind conceding the lane if it adds more value into the mid and late game team fights. And when you pair that up with an Orianna, that is what G2 are playing towards. This slow, scaling, passive style that the Unicorns are not looking to have. They're looking for violence. They have the flash ult Malzahar. They have the Kha'Zix in the early jungler. They have the ultimate from the Rise to look for roaming picks and try and force these early plays. And this just echoes exactly what the analyst desk were talking about, this clash of styles, this desire to just find fights, and we'll see who can actually get the fights when they want them.
Yeah, that's the case. I mean, a lot of people talk about the Unicorns' big team fighting composition, but as they said on the analyst desk, it's not as though G2 can't fight it out. They definitely have had some power for themselves. I'm really interested to see how this top matchup goes because the Renekton, I mean, that does go a little bit differently than the scaling compositions. I mean, this is your prototypical lane bully, or at least used to be.
Now, for those unaware, as mentioned, Renekton is a champion that has been picked a lot over in the LCK. He was picked also in North America a little bit. He actually hasn't had that much success. A long time ago, we used to only see Renekton and Shyvana, and he is a champion that is known for being an aggressor. He is a bully. He likes to push in lane. He has really high base stats, which enable him to trade very effectively against tanks in particular. And this just means that during the early laning phase, he spends a lot of time pushing, and he has a lot of sustain from his rage bar, which means that even if you trade back on him, he's usually going to be the one to always come out on top.
Yeah, he's going to be able to dice his way out to victory for sure. All right, so we'll see how Chachi handles him up in the top lane. The level advantage negated now that he gets back up, and he hasn't been too far down on farm in all honesty, but I'm really, really interested to see if the Kha'Zix jungle from Xerxes ends up making early trips up there. So far, he's just power leveling.
A difference between these two junglers is that Trick often doesn't spend very much time towards the top lane. The Expect is usually left on an island, and that often results in him not having the best performances. In recent weeks, he's definitely been able to make a name for himself, especially thinking back to his Camille game, his split pushing. In the mid and late, he really had a big impact. But if Unicorns want to punish it, I feel the top lane is a good avenue, especially when you have a constantly pushing Renekton and you have a Kha'Zix early game jungler.
Yeah, especially when Trick is going to be looking to scale up. He does have a better farm advantage right now as he takes away his blue buff or works for it. However, Xerxes is actually going to spot him right now as a teleport back up the top as Expect's heading out of lane. And you can see that Perkz is roaming around. See if we can get a catch on to Xerxes, who decided to back out as the teleport was expended. He's heading up towards topside. It's pinged out immediately.
I like the decision from Xerxes to pull back on the aggression. He realized that Exile in mid lane had backed away. that means that there was no support. Also, the fact that Expect was pushing top, Perkz was pushing mid, the collapse onto Xerxes if he'd gone too aggressive would have likely resulted in his death. So good awareness from him to then just back off. And so far, the very early game is going the way in which G2 won. Nothing too aggressive, nothing too wild from the Unicorns.
Just trying to slow them down now. Chachi, Expect, he's trying to move in. See if Trick's able to get a play off here. No, it's not going to happen. He just sends it into the line. It's dodged by Chachi, who takes the chance to back away. Meanwhile, down in the bottom lane, Sven and Mithy, as you said, they're looking to have a little harder of a time, except for the fact that they actually have a pretty big farm advantage for themselves right now.
Now, this is fascinating because when you look at Sven and Samux as AD carries, they're actually known for being really good farmers in lane, but for different reasons. Sven is the type of AD carry that will be just above and beyond in terms of his ability to farm. So on average, he is at 92 CS at 15, but usually his opponent is on average. So they're about 82, 83, whereas Samux, he is at about 87, which is just below Sven, but his opponent is always at 76.8. Now this means that Samux typically is much more aggressive in the laning phase and forces his opponent to lose farm, whereas Sven is just a naturally good farmer that's just so talented that no matter how aggressive his opponents are, he's always coming out ahead. And so far we're seeing Sven's style come out on top.
Have to give some credit to Hylissang for that. Now it's a 2v2 in the bottom, or in the mid lane, I should say. Exile looking for an opening to find Perkz. Xerxes was just threatening, but Trick was not perturbed by this at all. Ends up being a 2v2 for just a little while, but they're just going to poke it out. No first blood just yet, and that is exactly the way G2 Esports want to play this game.
I think Perkz really wanted to go back. He actually hadn't had an opportunity yet. He's sitting on a lot of gold, so having Trick come mid to just help clear out the wave means that Perkz isn't overextending the possibility of a collapse. And speaking of that...
Oh, it's a catch. Oh, Xerxes, the damage! Well, he really took it to Trick right there. First blood secured for the Kazakhs.
That is a great way to start for the Unicorns of Love. Xerxes picking up that first blood onto Trick. He was not expecting that invade, and he definitely wasn't expecting that damage.
And he certainly didn't evade it at all. I mean, that burst was something else. So Xerxes coming up on top with a big kill for himself to start things off, but so far it has been a quieter affair than perhaps the Unicorns would like it. No gold differential to speak of. Of course, still working on items. That first Sidestone picked up by Mithy. He's definitely a lot quicker on the draw than Hylissang.
Now the question is, what is Xerxes going to do with this first blood gold? Because he's now going to be the first to get level 6. He's now going to be able to get his jungle item much sooner than Trick, so he naturally has a stronger spike. If he can abuse it and potentially the top lane to put this Renekton behind, or maybe even just get Exile rolling, that is when you'll start to see the Unicorns of Love start making these map movements and start forcing these fights that G2 might not be able to avoid.
We'll see if they can build themselves up enough of an advantage to make it happen. Exile still trying to threaten on Perkz right now. Just playing it out very safely. It's going to be difficult to really push back against this without a whole lot of backup. As you said, Trick's going to be focusing on the power farm game, even though his own jungle is clearly not the safest place for him all the time. A few places on the map tend to be safe when you're playing off against the Unicorns of Love. We'll check back up in the top lane, though, as Chachi going the armor route. Got himself the chain vest, just trying to keep Expect at bay, but there is a level disadvantage for him here. Expect still trying to push this one in and get some chip damage on the tower.
I think that's worth mentioning too, Pyra, because in the past, what you saw a lot of players do into Renekton was actually start, do you remember the Cloth 5? So you'd go for that very early armor, and you just stack up on health bots to survive the Renekton lane. The fact that Chachi is just rushing this early armor is for a very similar vein, where because of the high base values on a lot of Renekton's abilities, he is very difficult to deal with. And just getting that early armor mitigates a lot of that pressure. So I like the response from Chachi.
Yes, indeed. Now, I do want to highlight that G2 have actually spent a lot of time and a lot of effort on making sure that the bottom side of the map is really spotted out. But they've not neglected the top either, because Xerxes is actually spotted right in that tri-bush in the last couple seconds of the ward. So Expect, naturally he's going to be able to back away just a little bit. So it has been a very vision-heavy game for both teams, despite the fact that Hylissang has yet to pick up his Sightstone. He does tend to take a little while than a lot of other supports to do it, however.
It is really important for G2 to invest in that early vision because they know they are playing against the Kazakhs, and we've already seen what happens if he's able to walk in unaware and get all of his free damage down. But also you have a lot of pushing lanes with G2 on Expect up in the top lane on the Renekton, and I wonder if they're going to go for this.
I think they are. Throws down the smoke screen, flashing preemptively. Chachi still got his. He's going to burn it, but is it too late? It is. A collateral damage from Trick means he gets a kill.
Trick moves in through the lane. The constant pushing from Expect means that Chachi has no idea this play is coming. They have enough damage to burn him down. They get his flash too, and G2 are looking for that first tower of the game.
Oh man, they're really trying to turn this one up. Play that objective game, get themselves even more of a gold advantage. Xerxes down on the bottom side is going to get foiled from stopping the vision game by Mithy, and it doesn't really matter because they can't get much else out of this. So Expect denying a few more minions, and he does let them secure first tower blood.
G2 respond nicely. Now, even after Trick loses that first blood gold, he's going to make up for it. And you can see that now G2 have gained a little bit more control over the map. What I'm curious to see is where Expect now moves on the map, because Unicorns of Love, they realize that Trick is not going to be close enough to be able to stop this dragon. This isn't going to be a likely objective. So perhaps G2 now invest into, rather than constantly pushing as Expect, you actually set up the wave so that it's pushing in your favor and you look to try and punish Chachi more. Or is Expect going to look to roam around the map? Is he going to try and force a couple TP plays bot? Is he going to look for a collapse onto Exile? He actually has a lot of opportunities because this is a very early tower for G2.
All eyes on Expect to see where he goes next, but you're right, G2 playing this one out. They have to be feeling pretty happy with themselves after that big play. Investment of a flash and an ult from Trick, and Expect just baiting it out, a masterclass in acting to draw Chachi into a false sense of security. Meanwhile, down bottom, Sven and Mithy are able to push the wave in their favor, and there's a 20 CS advantage for Sven. There's a reason this guy oftentimes called the best ADC in Europe, but meanwhile, we're going back to the mid lane. Trick is a little late to the party, but Exile had already been chunked almost down to 0. They're looking for tower 2.
G2 are just going to start exerting pressure onto this mid-tier one next. The movement from Trick is enough to just force Exile back. They don't have to wave clear anymore, so that mid-tower is going to take a lot of damage. Nice to see Perkz playing that aggressive Orianna style. We see a bit of trading up in the top lane.
Okay, so Chachi and Expect are just back at it again. He's going to knock him into the wall right now. Expect taking a few damage, a little bit of damage from the minions, but so is Chachi. Feels he might be confident enough to continue to take this one, see if he can buy some time for the junglers to arrive. But they're not interested at the moment. Xerxes and Trick are just saying, nah, you guys solve your problems yourselves.
So right now, G2 definitely with a lot more map pressure. Notice that now Sven is left alone in the bottom lane. G2 feels that he can leave his AD carry unaccompanied, so he's moving up through the river, getting a bit more vision control. A lot of vision actually invested into the bottom half of the map, given that it's unlikely for Xerxes to try and gank top, but Sven gets hit up.
Chains of Corruption were on, but Mithy was there to gobble him up, so he's not too far behind, even though he was going on a roam, and Semix's attempt to get the pick off denied by Mithy.
It really does surprise me that the Unicorns of Love is struggling so much in this bottom lane, because what you'd expect is for Varus and Malzahar to just constantly be pushing their opponents underneath the turret. Early on, we saw Xerxes actually exert a lot of pressure in the bottom half of the map, meaning that UOL had decent vision control, especially after their kill onto Trick in his own jungle. So the fact that they are conceding so much makes me wonder why they're playing so scared against this bottom lane.
Yeah, it's part of the question. Also, G2, they were the ones that gave this Varus over, and haven't seen too many teams do that on the blue side when it's available in this meta right now. Chachi trying to make a play onto Expect, but he's able to dice out of it. Slice out of it, I should say. Still, it's been the farm game for now. Since the junglers haven't been looking top for a little while, it has been a quieter affair there. But still, the Shockwave's going to land in the mid. Exile a little bit low. Perkz is going to run it in for a kill on Exile.
Solo kill by Perkz in the mid lane. And we do actually see a bit of training up top. But no kill is going to come out of that.
Might be another tower, though. Perkz and Trick, they're unopposed for a moment. Xerxes here. Unicorn's early game plan definitely not going the way they wanted. It's a 2K gold disadvantage. 2 kills to 1 at 13 minutes. G2 in control of this early game.
Exile was not respecting the damage from that Orianna. I can't entirely blame him, but the fact that Perkz was able to get a solo kill is so impressive. Actually maxing his Q first, something that is fairly standard for Orianna, that he'd already managed to get 2 or 3 points in his W as they now look for a roam bot.
Here we go, the Abyssal Voyage to cut off Samix and Hylissang for their own tower. Hylissang is going to get walked right into the chains. Double chains are on right now, but Hylissang, he might not live through this one. They're going to flash, the ball is out, and Perkz claims another.
Mithy makes the roam to mid to bring Perkz down bot. He knows that Exile isn't able to follow him because he was back at base. G2 get themselves another kill.
G2 are just looking great right now. Everywhere the Unicorns try to go, G2 are one step ahead of the game. Dodging out the piercing arrow, no sweat for G2 Esports. 4,000 gold advantage. Let's see that play again.
Really good map movement from Mithy to realize that the bottom lane would start pushing in once left alone, taking advantage of the fact that Perkz got that solo kill in the mid lane to then start snowballing it even further in the bottom. G2 doing such a great job with this early game, and we have to backtrack to what the analyst desk was saying, where UOL needed their solo laners to do well. And that is exactly what G2 have prevented. Not only did they take that first tower in the top lane, they put a Renekton into a Poppy so that constant pressure is exerted onto Chachi, and then Perkz gets a solo kill onto Exile. This could not be a better setup for G2 to force UOL into their style of play.
Not only are they comfortable in full control of this game, but the gold is shining through with the items as well. Perkz well on his way towards his second, while you still see Exile, sitting on the tier, sitting on the Catalyst, waiting to ramp himself up. The Rise needs more time. Still not an even story in the bottom. Sven has a whole BF sword on that of Samik, so gonna be harder and harder for Unicorns to try and contest this. Let's take a look up top though, as the junglers are gonna be joining in. The hammer comes out, it's flashed away from. Chachi has to burn his own. Xerxes coming a little bit late. A slice, a dice, an auto, and a kill for the interior crocodile alligator.
G2 picked themselves up another early kill. This time it goes on to expect. He'd already completed his Black Cleaver. He had more than enough damage to shred through the armor of Chachi. He had a bit of help from Trick, but nevertheless, it still results in an advantage gained for G2. And now, look at Perkz.
Let's see if he can get out of this one. Shockwave on himself, and instantly over the wall comes Trick. Perkz is going to be able to flash out of Exile's damage, and now Expect is there for the relief effort. The rest of G2 instantly moving to the defense of the mid lane. Unicorns, once again, cannot find anything out of it.
Perkz overstepping just a little bit. He did have some support coming from Mithy in the river, but we're going to have to go back to that in a second, because we'll look at this trade up top. Chachi, this is the risk that you have when you have no tower. There's no safety, which means that the moment Trick comes in for a gank, if you're going to be this overextended, you either need to have your jungler much closer for the counter gank, or you need to have, or you shouldn't be there, right? And the fact that Chachi actually flashed down the river created a larger gap between him and his jungler, but even with Cersei there, highly unlikely that the Unicorns of Love would have been able to win out on that 2 versus 2.
They are looking to set up a bait down on the bottom side, though. The Realm Warp is coming, and it's Exile, and they're out.
Mithy just using his ultimate to get out of that collapse. Unicorns of Love not quite having the same success with their roaming plays as G2.
G2 not making a whole lot of mistakes. Outside of the first blood, you can see that they have had UOL's number on this map so far. It seemed like the moment Trick died, he just cranked it up. He's like, okay, you want to play it that way? And he's been everywhere on this Graves.
You can see as well, he's doing very nice in terms of the farm. He's been making a lot more proactive plays than you typically expect from a Graves. But this is what you want to be seeing from G2 when they have a pressure advantage, because even if they weren't able to get the kill onto Chachi top, they still would have been able to force him back and go for a turret. You saw Trick do exactly the same thing mid lane against Exile, where even though they didn't get a kill, they forced him back and they put pressure on the objective. And this is one of the big stylistic differences, where G2 are very much in the early game playing around objectives, getting these small gains to pay off later, these small investments to then pay off later into the game. And so far, a lot of the UOL have not been able to turn anything into any kind of advantage. Even though in the bottom lane they should have had the push, in the mid lane it should have been fairly even, but we haven't seen much from Cersei other than that early invade.
Got a little gold for himself, but he just hasn't been able to get there as fast as Trick has, for certain. And now the wave clear is there for G2 in the mid. Perkz is able to clear things away. Unicorn's still hunting for a tower of their own, as G2 are sitting pretty on the 2. But just taking a look at it right now, G2 are in no rush. The Dragon up is an ocean. It's not super important for them. They gave away the last one to Unicorns. But at this point, they might be able to just force a fight if Unicorns are the ones that actually want it, because they're the ones trying to get a pick off here.
And that's what I'm excited about, because we've talked a lot about both teams being... when you think of the Unicorns of Love, you think of a team fighting team. That is what the perception is, right? When you think of G2, you think of them as a calculated, sort of calm team that plays a lot more around objectives. But when you actually look at some of the stats behind it, the percentage total number of kills that happen in the Unicorns game in 4 versus 4 or 5 versus 5 are only 30%. Whereas for G2, they actually get a lot more percentage of their kills from these 4 versus 4, 5 versus 5 fights. The difference is, whereas Unicorns of Love like to skirmish, they like to just find fights all over the map, perhaps not big team fights, you can see that Unicorns actually get a lot more out of it. Or the G2, sorry, they get a lot more out of it. They're very efficient. Usually, for 1 death, they get 2.5 kills. So even though Unicorns are considered to be this big team fighting centric team, G2 are very good at team fighting, even if they do not fight as often.
And a lot of those times, they choose not to fight, even when they have the opportunity to take something that looks advantageous to them. Been very vocal, talking about how this is something that they want to do because they know they can't build up big leads against some of these better international sides. The Unicorns, we thought this might be the team to make them take the training weights off, but right now, G2, they don't seem to have broken a sweat.
The thing is, I feel like this is G2 taking their training weights off. They're showing so much respect to the Unicorns, but they're also playing their game. They realize where they have advantages and they're pushing it. They're not hesitating. They just make the map movement and they force the play. They aren't taking their time in the sense that they're taking a long time to set up. They're just playing a long laning phase. They realize they have a push top, they push it. They realize they have a push mid, they extend it. And they're always looking to try and push these very small advantages to net an overarching gain. And this is what G2 are so very good at.
Trying their hardest to perfect this one. 20 minutes into this game, they find themselves with a 4,000 and some change gold advantage. It's all been about negating the strength of the Unicorns, and Chachi might find himself in a bit of trouble here. Expect goes a little deeper than he wanted. Chachi trades back with a buckler. All the same, G2 still moving heavy on the map. The Unicorns just trying to deny some of this vision, but G2 still controlling it.
Now, it's important to remember that Unicorns aren't at all out of this game. While they are at a gold deficit, that's not to say that they can't win a lot of these fights, because remember, they do have Varus. Naturally good in terms of the utility that he provides in team fights. Going for the lethality build means that he actually has a lot of poke pre-team fight, and against a champion like Orianna, who doesn't necessarily have the best mobility, you can get a lot of harassment down onto these carries before you actually engage in these team fights. Against someone like a Renekton, one of his biggest problems has always been how easy it is to actually kite the Renekton. So if you go for an early Rylai's on top of Hylissang, and if you just throw down your E on the Varus, you can then kite back against the Renekton. So there are a lot of options for Unicorns to come back in these later fights. We praised them a lot for their ability to team fight, so I don't want to consider them down and out just yet.
Absolutely not. Now, Unicorns of Love, they've actually been pretty solid on the Baron front as well. That's been a pretty big thing for them. But G2 haven't been too shabby. I feel like, though, the Unicorns, a couple of those, we saw the cheeky steal from Hylissang. That's contributing to it. We'll see if that becomes a big thing for them later on in this game as Chachi gets collapsed on for a second. But this time, he does have a tower to fall back under. And he's going to make it out alive. Now,
the Unicorns realize that this tower is going to go down eventually. Rather than risk any more potential deaths, what they've done is they've just rotated their duo bot round to the mid to start putting a bit of pressure down, to start farming away, and really that's the best lane for them to be in right now. So by having Chachi bot, they can send the Rise up top. He shouldn't struggle too much against Expectors. Unfortunately, Perkz does miss his ultimate just there.
Can't hit him well.
No, but you can also see now the damage that comes out from Samux, right? 2, 3 Qs just landing onto the Orianna. He's been chunked out, forced back. And this is the strength the Unicorns of Love have when playing around these objectives.
Yes, indeed. Perkz does not look too shabby this game. He has had a bit of help, but 2-0 right now, sitting on the Morellonomicon, as well as, honestly, a pretty big gold advantage for him, despite it just being exactly even in farm. He's been getting more done on the map, but I don't want to count Exile out because, as you said, well, not only is he such a great mid laner overall, just this year in particular, he stepped up huge. He's on this rise. That's going to get really, really big as the game goes on.
It's also a champion that he is known for. The Unicorns of Love make good work as we see a fight being forced from G2.
Curtain call is open. Hylissang's going to dodge one. He's going to dodge two, but has to force his flash. And the last one's going to connect right on the edge of it. And he gets taken down by Trick. A teleport being expended, but G2 are going to be running away with this one. Spitting Expect back into Chachi. The ball will dissuade any further action. It's a quick 1-0 in favor of G2 Esports.
Quick collapse from G2 to punish the rotating Unicorns of Love. Hylissang was forced to burn all of his summoners as he was earlier trying to get some vision control around Baron, but the way in which G2 forced that fight meant that the Unicorns had very few answers to try and stop it.
Oh, and they just have to be very wary of Perkz' ball right now. He just keeps on putting it so far forward, getting the damage out. You can see how even the tanky Chachi was getting chunked out just a little bit. So G2 continuing to play this map a lot better. You see some Unicorn vision now being placed all around this jungle, all up through the river. They want to make sure that G2 can't get anything for free. But there's no reason for them to try and rush down something like a Baron. They're playing way too controlled for that.
it would be very risky for the Unicorns to go for a kind of rush Baron play. While they definitely have a good Baron clear, there's always the possibility of the collapse from G2 and then them getting that Baron and just snowballing this lead out of control. I think the big point of contention next will be this Dragon. You can already see Unicorns have loved setting up vision because G2 have to back after getting that pick up towards the top half of the map. They're just pushing in top lane, bottom lane is being pushed in, and the moment that spawns, UOL could look to just rush it. But I'll be surprised if G2 give it over for free.
Absolutely. G2 playing this one way too well to be giving up objectives like that. No. There's always a chance they may try to make a trade or at least try to pick someone off, but you can see Hylissang and Samix guarding against it right now as Xerxes has backed away under tower. G2 appear to be threatening, moving most of their members towards the mid. Excel's got to be careful not to get hit by a ball. One champion gets taken out in a big ball of burst, and G2 just might change their tune. Chachi, meanwhile, is getting work done on the bottom, and that is going to prompt G2 to actually start off this Baron. Chachi does not have his teleport available, so this is at best a 4v5 for a while.
I wouldn't be surprised if G2 just use this as an opportunity to turn around and force the fight because they should not go for a 50-50 steal.
Now they're going to turn around, and Perkz just absolutely melts through Samix here. Unicorns tried to respond, but it was G2 that were just a little too quick. Let's see how the fight shakes out. Chachi knocks Sven into the wall, but it doesn't matter, and now the hammer comes to knock him away, but they're safe under mid-turret, and it's a curtain call being opened up. Unicorns are going to have to get out and dodge real quick, and they're realm warped out of there, but Hylissang is left on his own.
Hylissang has no flash.
Oh, he might get stopped up. He does have silences, however. Trick moving forward. He's going to try to dodge away. Flashing, and Trick with another. That's 2 for G2.
G2 simply used the Baron to force Unicorns into a fight. They knew that Chachi did not have the teleport up. Their main objective was to actually get themselves the Dragon, but the easiest way to challenge the Unicorns was say, hey, if you don't come and fight us, we're going to get this big purple ward, and Unicorns took the bait.
And here's how it all began. It was a real quick kill. Hylissang was able to shield up through most of it, but Samix just got instantly caught, and that tongue lash was doing work, but then they followed it through.
You can see that there was no vision from the Unicorns around that Baron. G2 had already set up full control, so Perkz could just get into the river, use his ball, and get the pick. Chachi tries to get the collapse down onto Sven, but the awareness from Mithy to just instantly gobble up Sven the moment he was in danger meant that Sven doesn't have to use his flash to escape from that. Great ultimate from Exile to be able to get out from that fight, but then Hylissang, he just stayed a little bit too long, and he ends up getting collapsed on. So G2, innovative, well, I say innovative, but just strong way to force a fight as Hylissang ends up going down again.
We just saw him die, but there he goes again. Hylissang is going back to found the express route 0-0-4 on the game. G2, it just keeps getting better and better for this team. Sven's starting to get rolling himself.
Going for an Infinity Edge second, and they're going to use that damage spike to actually go for the Baron. Lovely play from Trick to actually go over the wall and remove the Blast Cone threat. Will they commit, though?
Yeah, Mithy, he's going to get the Grey Health on, and Chachi's going to send one flying, but he might give his life for it. They do manage to take down Mithy, and Exile goes in onto Trick, doesn't have the damage to finish the job. He has to warp out to safety, but not before Expect. Gets one last slice on him. It is a 2-for-1. G2 once again come out ahead.
G2 again moving around to the Baron to force these fights. This time it felt that they actually wanted to commit a little bit harder to the Baron, given that Hylissang was taken out already. Unfortunately for them, UOL did a good job of responding in kind. They had a lot of poke with the Varus. Exile making his presence known made it difficult for G2 to commit. And I just love that play from Trick. Really good awareness of the Blast Cone to just remove that as a possibility for Xerxes to come in and steal. And you can see that the damage from Samix and Exile cannot be underestimated. Chachi does a great job of just knocking the tank out to buy more time for Exile to just go ham. He does miss his Q, which is a little bit unfortunate. There might have been another kill onto Trick, but you can see that G2 can't just easily take this Baron at free will. UOL still have a lot of fight left in them.
What they do, but they need to start finding some of those kills. Only been able to pick up 2 in this entire game, and one of those, if you recall, was the first blood for Xerxes. Good news for them, though. Seraph's Embrace completed finally now for Exile. He's starting to get rolling on this rise, but he does need to hit those Qs to make it count. Chachi's getting a little harder to kill, so they are hitting some power spikes for themselves, but they're going to need to be able to use them right now. There is another Infernal trait that will be spawning, but that's still a ways away. The Baron has been the priority for G2, and they are going right back to the scene of the crime.
They don't quite have as much vision control around the top half of the UOL jungle as of right now. They need to get their lanes back in order, because you can see in the bottom lane, UOL have successfully pushed it towards G2. In the top lane, that's pushing as well. So G2 need to slow down just a little bit right now. They need to get read control, have bot lane pushing, have top lane pushing. Expectav does have his TP. And then once the lanes are pushing, you just move into the enemy jungle and you gradually extend your vision line so that you have much more control over what the unicorns are doing and you have better setup when you try to force that Baron play again.
So far looking for the good setup themselves. Samix is tanking shots of the curtain call. The last one, he's just outside of range. Meanwhile, the top laner's Tango in the bottom side. Well, we've seen this dance a couple of times, and Expect, he throws down the Dominus, and in comes Mythy. Chachi's got a flash, and he is not going to be able to use it. 3-on-1 ain't fair, but Expect comes out with the kill.
And G2 likely won't lose very much off the back of this because it was just Mythy's ultimate that was used to move them down to the bottom lane. The bottom lane is now pushing for G2, so if UOL to force something, you can just have the teleport come in from Expect and use him to buy time for the rest of G2 to come up. So UOL have no answers. This was a clean play from G2, and honestly, a bit of an overextension from Chachi because as we were just discussing, there's no way for UOL to actually get any gain from the back of that play.
And there was no vision there either. It didn't really matter when you have the Tom Kench porting his way in, but it's just so hard for Unicorns to make something happen. The Baron, they're still hovering around it, but the Unicorns are going to be able to spot out any moves on it for the time being. Difficult to get back into this one, but as we keep mentioning, Unicorns, they're never really out of it, but it's 30 minutes in. It's a big advantage in gold for G2, and they typically do not give it up after that. Perks is going to insta-cleanse the Nether Grasp of Hylissang. And he's still safe on the mid. The shockwave is huge. Command delete, and G2 are looking to do just that to visit Chachi. The hammer, the windup, it is not enough to knock everybody out of dodge. The redemption comes in, he gets Expect into a wall, and it is not enough damage. He flashes away. G2 keep all their members alive by the skin of their teeth, and they claim 2 unicorns.
Perks turning to Hylissang and saying, that's not an ultimate, this is an ultimate. Using that, flashing in aggressively to get the shutdown onto him. Unicorns tried to turn around for a fight, but they are just so far behind and in such a bad position that it is a clean teamfight win for G2 as they are now kicking off the Baron.
Now Perks is sitting around the other side to see if he can spot out a steal attempt by Xerxes. Could be dangerous here. Samix and Exile are still there. Piercing Arrow comes in. Trick was already around the side and he spotted Xerxes. The damage is not quite enough, and off screen, Perks just picks off Exile. This is looking better and better for G2. Xerxes would need to be the hero, but they are taking their time about this one. Hylissang incoming. G2 still committing for this. Very low. Mythy is tanking up too much. He dies. In goes Xerxes! Oh my word, he doesn't get the steal, but that was close.
It certainly looked like it because he does get the kill onto Mythy, but that is not the target that he wanted to be damaging, and G2 get themselves the Baron. This is how the play all starts off. Hylissang jumps in, flashes aggressively to lock down Perks, but he'd already completed his QSS. Perks responds in kind by using his ultimate to get a kill onto Hylissang, and this is where things start to descend into madness as Chachi, all alone, 1 versus 4, just doesn't have the support from his team. The Unicorns do not feel confident enough to hard commit with the presence of Mythy and Perks hanging around the river entrance to just zone the rest of UOL away, where Chachi effectively gets left to the masses, and G2 can use that to force the Baron.
Well, what we're seeing in all these fights is just the clean execution from G2. Unicorns have not been bad, but they just aren't getting these openings at all. And as a result, it's been so difficult for them to really get anything. 3 to 14 in kills. That Baron, Xerxes looked like he might have had the hero play, but instead of getting the worm, he got the toad.
And I agree with you, Para. I think that this is a clear demonstration of not the Unicorns of Love playing badly. This is G2 outplaying the Unicorns, not only from a map perspective, but on an individual perspective. The fact that Perks was able to get a solo kill onto Exile, Orianna into Ryze is just so impressive. And what you'd expect from both these teams, really. Like, we were wondering, coming into this, which style would come out on top. And so far, I just feel that G2 have perfected their style so well that they are now punishing the style from Unicorns of Love and not enabling them to play the way that they are so used to.
Might be a big thing to think about for the Unicorns going into game 2, but for now, they're just trying to do damage control. The Baron Empowered minions doing work on this tower, and Trick finishes the job. Trick has been on fire this game. Coming into it, it really looked like Xerxes might be able to make some big plays and put him on the back foot, and that first blood certainly seemed an indicator of it. But Trick is showing right now why he is a 2-time MVP in Europe.
He really is doing a lot of work on this, Graves. This is a pick that, after talking to him, he did say he has a lot of value on, but now Unicorns are trying to get something back.
All right, expect. He's got the dominance on. Chachi and Xerxes both a little bit low. Is he really going to try for the 1v2? Mithy is coming to even the odds here. Redemption's coming down. This tower may not save them for too long. Expect stays healthy enough. With Mithy's help, they're going to be able to get even more. Another tower is going to fall courtesy of Sven. And G2 are just pushing on all lanes into the base of Unicorns.
They are dividing the Unicorns lineup. They know they have a big gold lead, and now they're trying to force it.
Oh man, Perkz is just so slippery. He finally gets shut down, but Exile nearly eats it. He's gonna have to walk out back to Fountain. Another tower's taken down on the bottom side. Trick was pecking away at it. Unicorns are sensing desperation. Maybe now looking for Mithy. He's got great health. He's not even gonna need to use it. Unicorn's trying to charge down the mid. Trick says, that's fine, I can go back to base, I can buy some items. G2 are not flustered in the slightest.
UOL are able to hold the line. They get the pick down onto Perkz after he had used both his cleanse and his QSS. There was finally a window for them to abuse his lack of flash, and they get it. Now Unicorns may even be able to get a tower back on the map, but it's not going to be enough to close the big gold gap.
It's a tier 1 tower in the mid. Unicorns have just had so much trouble trying to grab that one, and it just shows how different this game has been from every single game that they've played pretty much this entire split. You look at that, only 4 games so far till now. For the Unicorns have gone past 35. These guys close out quick.
For the Unicorns, they're a team that has traditionally, throughout the spring split, gotten a lead at around the mid-game point and snowballed it. But because of how far behind, the best they can hope to get for at this point are picks like this. Notice that both the cleanse and the QSS were used earlier on, thanks to Samex and Hylissang, that enabled Exile to go in for the flash and land the root, so there was no way for Perkz to be able to escape.
I mean, you spend so much CC, several ultimates, several flashes, just to not die to Perkz and then to kill him. That's a huge investment, and it's, yeah, shutdown gold. Okay, come on. But the guy's 6-1 and 5, and he's deleting people with shockwaves.
But at this point, if you're UOL, you have to get what you can, right? You're so far behind that this is the last line of turrets that you have, and in the bottom lane, you don't even have a turret anymore. So it is G2's game to lose at this point. And if you are the Unicorns, yes, there is always that possibility because you have strong wave clear in the form of Varus. But the way in which G2 are compensating for that is they're dividing UOL up. They're trying to split up that wave clear and force Chachi into lanes where he can't match people like Perkz, people like Expect. And so they're slowly working their way into the base of the Unicorns.
Yeah, and they've been doing it well. Every single member of this G2 team has been doing that job the way they've needed. Even Sven, it's a quieter game for him, but it's like a secret agent. He's been working it really well, just knocking down towers where and when he can. Mithy, delivering people into fights. This team, I mean, there's a reason that they are the kings of Europe. Back-to-back champions, looking to try and repeat that once again. Several weeks away before that happens, but this could very well be a final matchup. The preview of one, at least.
It also may very well be a preview for next week. Both of them in the same group at IEM. Simply a stepping stone, but I think that right now, yes, G2 have the lead, but from watching the Unicorns many times,
you can never count these guys out.
You knock them down, but they get up so quickly that they are not a team you can afford to underestimate. Now, the Baron is going to be spawning in about 1 minute and 15 seconds, which means that that's likely the play for G2 to play around, and this could be a window for Unicorns to come back. They have lost a lot of vision control around their topside jungle, as they actually go for a bit of a 1v2 against Expect.
I mean, Expect is going to get stopped up for a second by the Nethergrass, but look at how squishy Hylissang is, and Expect is recognizing that. Meanwhile, Trick was just polishing off another tower. Hylissang, he's going to get flashed on, he's going to get sliced down to 0, and Chachi just doesn't have the damage. The Shockwave is pulling in Exile, dodging the collateral damage, but it doesn't mean a thing. Expect is just too damn big, and G2 are onto the inhibitors. They don't need the Baron.
They do not, Pyra. They're looking to close that game 1 right now. They've gotten a kill onto Exile, a kill onto Hylissang, and they're in a prime position to look to finish this game.
Playing the game out the way they want at 38 minutes. That's about their average. They've got 2 inhibs down, and Perkz is just chasing Chachi around the map.
He's got no health. Perkz wants to pad out the KDA. I feel this is a little greedy from Perkz. They should look to just try and end things now, but the rest of G2 seem to have the priorities straight.
Yes, they do. 16-4 in kills on this game. The gold has gone out of control for the Unicorns. They are trying desperately to fight back, but they are clinging to 2 Nexus towers and nothing else. G2 can easily clean up this Baron, grab themselves as much vision as they want to see Xerxes coming a mile away. There is so little Unicorns can do to snatch this game back.
And Chachi got away. He was able to outplay Perks. He didn't give away his life.
Always look on the bright side, eh, Vetty?
Always the bright side. And now we talked about the Baron. G2 already setting up around it. The question is, what can UOL do to try and get the steal back? Because we saw Cersei try earlier on, wasn't quite able to do it, but there's always a chance for another.
There's the Realm Warp. Oh,
they've got
bring
in!
everybody, but they're into the pit. The hammer. Oh, they're just going to take it down themselves. It's not stolen away. Trick secured it with the smite. It was a nice try, boys. But in the end, G2 Esports, they may not have been expecting that one, but they were able to finish it off.
I love the all-in play from the Unicorns of Love. That is such a Unicorns thing to do. They know their backs are against the wall, so they just make the play. They go in, all 5 members into the Baron pit. They try to force the steal, and while they can't get it, it doesn't matter because they go down valiantly.
Win or lose, these guys definitely played it out with style. Mithy swallows Visit Chachi for the kill. It's gonna be only Nexus turrets taken down for the end of it all, 20-5. G2 playing out, cool, calm, collected, and they will take game number 1 over the Unicorns of Love.
Very clean game from G2 Esports. Early on when Cersei got that first blood, I thought, this is a great start for Unicorns. Cersei can now really start to snowball these lanes, get his solo laners ahead. They should have push in the bottom, but early on, perhaps a bit of nerves from the Unicorns because we didn't see Cersei looking to play that aggressively. We didn't see the bottom lane getting very much of a push on. They were actually the ones being pushed back.